My stepbrother turned my allergy into his party trick, so I made him the main event. My stepbrother Ethan discovered my severe shellfish allergy and decided to use it as his favorite party trick. And I don't mean accidents in the normal sibling rivalry way. I mean it like he'd accidentally use the shrimp fork to serve my salad at family dinners. Like he'd order pad thai without shellfish, but somehow forget to mention the fish sauce. Like that time he hugged me after eating crab cakes, and I spent prom night in the ER because he didn't think touching would matter. At first it was monthly, then weekly, then he started getting creative. I found crushed shrimp shells in my gym bag after he'd borrowed it for laundry. He'd spray seafood stock on my steering wheel right before job interviews and watched me break out in hives during the handshake. When I locked my bedroom door, he slipped lobster juice under the gap with a syringe. I woke up with my eyes swollen shut like overripe plums. He contaminated my graduation cap the morning of the ceremony. I walked across that stage looking like I'd been stung by 1,000 bees while he filmed it for memories. During Thanksgiving, he ground up dried anchovies into the gravy, and I spent 7 hours in the ICU. But the worst part wasn't the hospital visits or the debt from EpiPens. It was how he'd perfected his performance. That Oscar-worthy sob when he'd tell people, "I try so hard to be careful," while calculating exactly how much it would hurt but not kill. Then came my 21st birthday. Mom made my favorite chocolate cake from scratch. No seafood in the entire house. I was actually happy. Ethan smiled and handed me a leather journal as a gift. "For your memories," he said. I opened it. Page after page of photos. Me in the ER, me swollen at graduation, me unconscious and intubated, IVs in both arms. Timestamps showed he'd been there every time, documenting it like a medical study. The last page had a note. Phase 1, complete. My chest burned. I looked up. He was still smiling. Phone out, recording my face. Phase 2 is when we test organ failure, he whispered, just to me. Mom was cutting cake in the kitchen, humming. Dad was setting plates. Nobody heard him. Nobody ever heard him. Then he snatched the journal back before I could show anyone. That was it. I snapped. Not loud, not dramatic. Just cold clarity washing over me. If he wanted to play with death, I'd teach him the rules. I studied Ethan like he'd studied me. His weakness? That journal wasn't just documentation. It was evidence. He thought he was building a medical study, but he'd actually created a confession. Here's the best part. I found his laptop password, his dead goldfish, the only thing he'd ever cried about, and discovered something beautiful after sneaking into his room at night. All his college applications had the same essay about overcoming the death of a severely allergic sibling. Yup, he was banking on my literal death for his tragic life story, and the proof was right here. I just had to use it to expose him. I waited for the perfect moment, the morning of Ethan's final med school interview. First, I emailed his entire journal to myself, then forwarded everything to our parents with the subject line, "Why I've been in the hospital 17 times. Then I did something beautiful. I printed his phase 2 document and slipped it into his interview portfolio, right between his transcripts and recommendation letters. He was too nervous to double-check his materials. A few minutes after he left, I heard Mom scream from downstairs. Dad was hysterical and hugged me while apologizing for not seeing the truth sooner. Then they turned over Ethan's room, finding his backup drives, his physical journals, and the vials of shellfish extract he kept in his closet. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in that interview room, confidently pulling out his portfolio. I know exactly when he found the document, because Mom's phone rang and she put it on speakerphone. The interviewer had called to report a disturbing situation and said that they had notified the authorities. Ethan came home to find 2 detectives in our living room. His laptop was bagged as evidence, and Mom sobbed into Dad's shoulder. He kept protesting and screaming, trying to defend himself. "It was just research. I was going to write about allergies. I wasn't really," but the detective cut him off, reading from phase 2. Hopefully he should be gone within 6 months. His own words in his own handwriting. There was no way to deny it. They arrested him for attempted murder and then notified the medical board. Every school had blacklisted him before his bail hearing, and oh boy, he really showed his acting skills in front of the judge. He cried for 12 minutes straight, begged everyone to forgive him because he was only trying to bond with his brother, and swore he would never do it again. The judge blinked, laughed, and then gave him the maximum sentence because of how much he had planned it. While Ethan was rotting in prison, I slowly rebuilt my life. I got into med school myself because, as it turns out, surviving an attempt by a family member makes one hell of an application essay.